Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of my new podcast, Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is a connection of mine, initially from LinkedIn. Rosalie Vaughan joins me on the show, works in the world of sales, joins me from the US, based in Austin. I'm looking forward to getting to know her a bit more, find a bit more about her journey and her to share some of her wisdom. And I know she's picked up on a couple of things that I've been posting about on LinkedIn over the years. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. So, Rosalie, with that introduction, welcome to the show. How are you getting on?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the warm welcomes. As you said, joining you from Texas. So it is true what they say. We are rowdy down here, So I'll try to save some of that for this conversation. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really inspired by your content. That's kind of what inspired me to reach out and say, hey, this is working, keep going. So I'm happy to
Well,
be
thank you
here.
very much. Very kind. So
Yeah.
let's kick it off with, I guess, the present. Now, as a bit of an introduction, you work as a business development rep for a company called GitLab, and it's a pretty new role. So I'm keen to find out how are you getting on in the new role. And tell me a bit more about the sort of nature of the position.
Yeah, so right now, I'm currently working as a business development representative in the public sector at
Yeah.
GitLab. GitLab is a company that's focused on DevOps, DevSecOps, and really anything to, help the entire software deployment and development process. So how it's going, I have an unpopular opinion. I think anyone who's ever been an SDR or BDR knows that it's a
Yeah.
grind, knows that it's not always pleasurable to make all these dials and outreach and cold call, So the reason why it's unpopular is because I actually really like
Okay.
it. I think the account executives have a lot more pressure. I just sell the meeting,
Yeah.
and so I think there's a lot of really interesting complexities to the BDR role where you can really practice being an excellent communicator and tap into kind of what motivates people to respond, what evokes emotion, how to handle objections. So it's kind of like sparring
Okay.
in philosophy and communication a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I enjoy that. So that's what I currently
Mm.
do. And I am here, learning and absorbing all I can before I transition into a more technical role in the
Okay.
future.
Just picking up on something you said there, actually, you mentioned you're selling the meeting. Is that true? You're selling. Are you sort of picturing yourself selling the product? What you're the offering, or are you actually selling the meeting as an SDR? What's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, so for me, I sell the meeting.
Yeah.
So again, if you've been a BDR, you know that you're the first person of contact, and then you're going to route that to an account executive, or at least in my company or my experience with my previous company as well. So I think it's for me when I first started as a BDR, I really felt bad because I didn't have the technical ability to sell, or I didn't really understand what they were trying to relayed to me. And I thought I should, have all of these really charismatic sales techniques and I should be pushing the sale. It didn't really dawn on me until later in my BDR career that that's not my role. My role is to route them to the right person, to gather as much information as I can, and book that next meeting. From there, the sales handoff gets to the people who are really trained, and their role is more specifically to push the sale
Yeah.
and get it to close. So yeah, that was a big philosophy turn
Mm.
in the role that made me more successful and put a lot of pressure
Mm.
off of me because it's just the meeting.
Okay. Okay. Nice. You mentioned success. You
Yeah.
mentioned being successful. Something you had connected with me on the past is about what makes a successful salesperson. From your experience and your opinion, what do you believe? I guess the traits that make a successful salesperson. What is it about them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have this comical idea of the perfect salesperson being this really boisterous and aggressive
Yeah.
type, which they are there, and they're incredible in their own right. But for me, what's made me successful as a salesperson has always been connecting to empathy, connecting to that human to human experience that we all share outside of the workplace. I really like to rely on transparency, humor, pattern interrupts, to really, disarm the conversation, make it seem more natural. And I think that's what good salespeople tend to do. They really understand, how to relate to their prospects and tap into, just a human talking to another human where there's not all this pressure. You may know, as some or most salespeople know, we're not the favorite. No one's just like, I wish someone would cold call me today. That just sounds excellent.
Yeah.
So, we're already on the defense. There's a saying that the sale starts when you hear the word no. So, what I think makes a good salesperson successful is their ability to navigate someone who is already frustrated and already annoyed that you're calling, and get them to like you, and further get them to buy things from you, or at least take on a meeting with the idea that they might buy something in the future. So again, to answer that question, for me, it's always just human to human connection right off the bat,
Yeah.
and not being the sleazy sales guy. Sorry for all the sleazy salespeople out there, the snake oil. Yeah, shout out. They make it work somehow, but that never really worked for me.
Well, I think sometimes they actually make it easier for the salespeople that maybe like yourself that are
Yeah.
leading with empathy because they're not connecting with them on on a sort of person to person basis. How do you? What are some of your tactics then to say lead with that empathy? I think you mentioned to me, you dropped me a note earlier about how someone brushed you off on a cold call. What sort of tactics do you employ to say disarm the for not better word disarm the prospect that you're calling up?
Yeah, so it's a lot about, the way that you frame words. So I like to tell people, I think we mentioned the brush off, which is pretty popular, at least with my colleagues,
Yeah.
is, hey, I took this call at 9:13 and I'm running into a meeting. Most meetings are booked on the hour or the half hour. So, a lot of times it's just a polite way to say, hey, I'm busy and I'm running into a meeting. And so for me, again, that's an opportunity to show empathy because I know what that's like. So, phrasing it like, hey, do you just have a few minutes, or do you mind sparing a few of moments of your time because I know your time is valuable? Or, hey, I know you're rushing into a meeting. I understand what it's like to be in and out of meetings all day. That can be draining. How are you feeling right now?
Mm.
Do you have the time to receive what I, to say, or, so instead of like taking their time, asking them if they're able to give you time. So things like that, just really putting the ball in their court, and to understand, like, yeah, I get it, you're rushing to the meeting, whether that be a true or false statement. So, I want to value your time. Do you have some time to give me before you rush into the meeting? Or, like, hey, just send me an email. And it's like, I know that that email is going to get lost in the sauce. I know that sometimes we don't always check our inboxes, especially if you're really busy, as I imagine you are. You know, I think it's better to just get on the call, see us, have a face-to-face conversation. You're going to get a lot more out of that, instead of, reading through an email. Too long didn't read is like truly a syndrome, and I don't want to do that to you. So again, it's really just going back to valuing their
Mm.
time, framing it to asking them for their time, and again, just bringing for me light to, yeah, I get it. Like I wouldn't want someone calling me when I'm rushing to a meeting, or yeah, I'd rather just have an email so I can blow it off or brush it off, and using, why they're using that brush off
Yeah.
because they, towards
Yeah.
them. Does that
Yeah,
make
it does. Yeah, it
sense?
does. I think
So it's really
no,
long-winded.
no, it's great. It's great. I think it's
Thanks.
it also takes a bit of courage to do that as well, especially when it's like to sort of challenge them a little bit to be like, look, if I send you an email, let's be honest, it's probably going to get lost. You're not going to read it, kind of thing. So if you
Yeah.
take it,
Yeah, and then always like throws them off. And they're just like, whoa, wait, is like I thought you were just trying to push this, push that. It's not the answer that they expect, right?
mm,
And so when someone kind of uses a pattern interrupt of transparency and like, hey, I get it, it has been successful for me to disarm them and to have a more natural conversation where they're more willing and receptive to just sharing information.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, gotcha. So, thanks for running through that. I was just hoping to maybe go back in time a little bit. You know, we talked about your current role, the present. If we go back to your background, I know your background is in, as you said at the start, well, earlier on, that it's in the world of, I think, computer science, mathematics. That's what you studied. How did you end up where you are today in the world of sales? Is what I'm keen to find out.
I think you're frozen. You froze. You froze.
Sorry, Rosalie. Did you get that?
No, no, you're good. You're good. All I got was studied computer science
Yeah.
and math.
The question was, how did you go from that background to where you are today working in the world of sales?
Well, um, yeah, to keep it as conservative as possible, I found out that I was going to be a mother in the middle of my college
Right.
career. And, when I was taking on computer science and math classes, that's always been a passion of mine. I actually have a computer even tattooed on my skin. But so yeah, I knew that I wanted to work in this industry. I knew that I was absorbing a lot of information just naturally, being passionate and eager to learn about technology, and from a computer science perspective, put myself in a position to be creative and to build um, you know, infrastructure applications that were really making a difference in people's lives. So when I found out that I was going to be a
Yeah.
mother, I had to kind of curtail that and take a step back, because as the curator of his childhood experience, he kind of took a hierarchy in my priorities. And so um, I still wanted to stay connected to the tech industry. When I got out of college, I ended up just getting my degree in mathematics. And when I graduated, COVID happened. So
Right.
the job market wasn't really um, something that was prosperous at the time. Everyone was kind of just on a standstill to see what
Mm.
the next moves were going to be. So I actually got a job at Mathnasium,
Yeah.
which is a after school learning. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with it, or if you have any in Australia. I think maybe there's one.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just an after school for K through
Okay.
12. Helping kids get caught back up with math, or kids who are accelerating, challenging them. So I started there, and really quickly I realized that it was less of a mathematics position, although I did, train the instructors on how to teach math, how to understand, um, how to relay those mathematical concepts through different age appropriate groups. It was mostly just running a business. So it was very business operation, sales operation. My role was everything. I wore all the hats:
Right.
marketing,
Yeah.
business operations, sales. And so I really enjoyed it. I was in the restaurant customer service industry going through college. That's also sales oriented. And I knew that as I become more invested in being a mother, that I just simply didn't have enough time to go back and revisit those computer science studies. So the next best thing was to be in tech sales.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I was trying to make the pivot from moving from Houston to Austin, it seemed natural to find an entry level sales position in the tech industry so I could, start where I left off. And eventually I would like to be in solutions architect, sales engineering, pivot into product management. So kind of back in fighting my way
Yeah.
into a more technical role since, this life event happened.
Yeah. Gotcha. Thanks for sharing. So that previous
Yeah.
background at Mathnesium, what you touched on a few things, I think, but what can you take from that experience that you now implement in your current role in a pure sales position?
Yeah, so much. One thing that I think the only rocky transition was, because it was such an aggressive sales role. Again, going back to transitioning into what exactly the BDR does in the sales process. So
Yeah.
I think I went in more with an account executive mindset.
Okay. Yeah.
But outside of that, I only profited from it. It was my first real enterprise leadership role. So, working with a team, leading teams, learning a lot about how to run a successful business, learning a lot about how marketing initiatives drive business success. This was the first time that I was fighting against a quota, so are trying to achieve a
Yeah.
quota. So again, the pressure of sales there. So I was able to take all of that with me into the BDR role, understanding, what drives business initiatives, what people are looking for, and what the role of marketing and sales plays in having a profitable,
It's
sorry,
all good.
business overall.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
What about the leadership piece? What did you learn about yourself, and what did you learn about leadership from your time managing and dealing with people?
That I was a bit of a micromanager at
Okay.
first. I think the biggest thing that I learned was that I really enjoyed that role. I think inspiring others to do well, training them, coaching
Mm,
them, the whole process from hiring to development to really making sure that that place ran smoothly, from being the first point of contact with the parents, being the leader for my staff and instructors. So it was just, it felt like I was where I needed to be. Even though I will say that when you're first starting off in management, it is difficult to delegate tasks when you want things to go well.
mm,
So that was
yeah.
really cool to learn, as a leader, how to enable and train your staff to a way that you trust them to get the job done when you're not there. And so I think even going through the process of kind of being a micromanager just out of fear and sheer anxiety that something was going to blow up if I wasn't involved,
Yeah.
to learning how to take a step back and really train and enable someone through constructive criticism, constructive feedback. And it was really a collaborative process. And so, again, that's something that I really learned from being a leader is how, you're not really separate from your staff or the people who are underneath you. It really is a collaboration to make the whole thing
Yeah.
work. There's no I in team. So
Yeah.
yeah, I learned so much. I mean, honestly, I could go on and on about it, but I'll save you. Next
I
question.
think no, that's the one about sort of having the trust to delegate to your or being able to put tasks to not just wanting to do it all yourself is such a common thing and struggle that leaders face, especially maybe in their first leadership role. It's not surprising you had to deal with that and encountered that. I think the key word there for me anyway, leadership. The word is trust. The best leaders I know are the ones, or it's that two-way mutual trust between, say, the employee and the manager, that you trust that they'll have your back and they'll support you when needed, but then they also trust you just to get on with your job. For me, I don't know, good leadership always starts with trust between the two. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, there's something to be said about a really solid, trusting relationship between an employee and their boss or leader.
Mm,
Because, when you really support your leader and when you truly and authentically feel like your leader has your back and that their intention is to develop your career and to advocate for you when things are, when you feel like maybe let's just take it back to the BDR role. If
yeah,
a BDR is having trouble with their working relationship with an account executive, you'd want your leader to advocate for you. And so when you develop that trust and that relationship, it makes you as the employee want to work harder, because it's similar as like, you know, for your friend or for your pal, you're going to want to do more for them than someone that you just met, a stranger, because you've developed that trust, you've developed this kind of mentality of you've got my back, I've got yours.
yeah,
And also allowing your employees to have autonomy really inspires them to do good work, manage their own business, telling them, hey, I have so much faith in you that, I'm going to take a step back and I'm not going to micromanage
yeah.
you. I can trust you to get the job done. That also feels good as an employee and makes you want to work harder, makes you
Mm,
want to prove that, their trust in you is not
mm,
misplaced.
mm.
So I would definitely agree that that's a really key component in building that relationship.
I think that trust allows you or allows them to. to be, I think, especially if we just talk about sales here, I think a lot of one of the key things is to get creative in your role and try new things, and not be shackled to say a
Yeah.
script or whatever, or a certain way that a manager wants you to do the role. Once you have the trust, they just say, I want you to try new things. I want you to get creative in this. That's when and the shackles are off, right? You can just go for it. Just go for it. Try new
Yeah.
things. That's when I see people have success rather than being tied down. Um,
No, absolutely. When you have the freedom, that you're trusted and you have the freedom to be the captain of your own ship, you don't want to leave the ship,
mm,
right? You don't want to, you're not angry. You're not like, I can't do anything
yeah,
because this, leader is breathing down my neck. So you're not happy. You're not going to do good
yeah.
work. It's really important, to have a really, collaborative and symbiotic relationship with your leader.
And not tempted to jump to another ship, potentially like another company, as if you don't have that relationship
Yeah.
with your boss, your leader. That's I don't know, can happen. um
Oh, it's like so unfortunate.
mm,
Yeah. People leave jobs, their dream careers. They come in with so much excitement, to do good work, and they, end up on a team where they might not have a leader who's servicing them in the way that they should. And it's really, yeah, it's really discouraging. You want to leave, you want to go somewhere else, you want to work for someone else. And again, that relationship is honestly a key component in how productive you're going to get, how much productivity you're going to get out of your employees.
mm, yeah, spot on. So, Rosalie, we've talked about the present, we talked about the past a little bit, the future. You mentioned you may be looking to get into a more technical role in future. Where does I appreciate your background in computer science? That's maybe where it stems from. But what does that sort of look like, and where what's the vision for maybe the future? What does the next, I don't know, couple of years look like for you, say, in your career?
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully the world will behave and I can have a future. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, no, I think for me, I really enjoy solving problems. I, have always been really driven by, the challenge of breaking up a problem into a bunch of micro problems, and really getting down to the technical issues that these, prospects or customers are facing. This means a lot to them. These business initiatives are a lot of times pass or fail with the success of their company as a whole. And I think with a more technical position, not only am I supporting my sales ops, my account executives, answering questions that they might not be able to answer. So not only supporting my internal team, but externally supporting my, customer base, as I can get in there and kind of pull my sleeves up and really understand from a technical perspective what's going on and how to solve it.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I hope that the future holds a position where I can really get in and solve these technical problems, and go back to what drove that passion to be a computer science in the first place. Because, if technology always worked, none of us would have jobs in this industry.
Mm,
So someone's got to go in there and, fix these problems. And so that's really where I would like to position myself.
yeah. Well, where did that passion come from, by the way? For the tech and computer industry, is it something that's always been there for you, or
I
was
mean,
it
where does,
developed?
yeah, like that's an interesting question. Where does passion come from?
Mm.
Like, are you born with it? Do you develop
Do you
it?
find it like, yeah?
Yeah, do you find it? And honestly, for me, it's really a really not even, it's kind of a funny story, but um, I remember sitting in a class, my freshman year, whenever you have to do like all, well, I guess I'm not sure if you're familiar with American curriculum. I'm like, remember, Joe? But we don't live in the same country. But yeah, so your freshman and sophomore year, you have to take these mandatory classes, no matter what your major is.
Okay.
History, speech, things like that. And so I was in a speech class, and we had a prompt where we had to teach someone something.
Okay.
And I remember I was so bored. It was like just going through these people. I had no interest in what anyone was teaching me. Sorry if you're watching this, and but and this guy came up, and I remember that he started talking about like how to build a private network, and like these VPNs, and going even further into basically how to build a network system, just even with your buddies, like because similar to kind of like a LAN party situation, where you guys can all hyper connect. And I remember I was drawing circles out of boredom because they give you like a feedback sheet
Right.
where you write, feedback so you can share. Um, and something happened. I remember caught something was triggered in my brain where it's like I was hyper focused and like it was like, hey, pay attention,
Mm.
kind of intrinsically. And so I look up and I swear I like the whole presentation was glowing, this man was glowing, like it was just I was so interested in what was coming out of his mouth. And also not only was I interested, but I was able to conceptualize and really understand what he was trying to say. And from there, I think, the daydreams were just kicking off. There was all of these really feverish curiosity that I was experiencing where I just wanted to know everything and anything there was about this industry, computer science, how this
Yeah.
works. And it really felt like, my whole life I was watching this magic show, and then suddenly I was listening to all the tricks. And it made sense from a back end perspective, and it opened up this world of complexity
Mm.
that I was just really drawn into. And, ever since then, I've been a super nerd,
Yeah.
but my resume doesn't reflect that. So, even in the BDR role, a lot of my colleagues and everyone will just be like, "What are you doing here? Like, you're such a nerd. Like, you're so technical. You have all of this technical knowledge. Like, why are you in this entry level sales position?" But it's difficult to say, hey, I've got all this knowledge on YouTube and my nerd friends and
Yeah.
all these books. I've self-acquired all of this knowledge, and being able to translate that on a resume to a recruiter can be
Yeah.
challenging.
But it seems like you've combined the two because you've got that, you're selling a technical product, you're
Yeah.
selling to, as you said, selling to nerds. You're enjoying that aspect of it. And then you're also, but you're not, we're having a normal sort of conversation with here. A lot of these technical people often can't sort of, you feel like they can't hold a conversation. You're not that, right? So you definitely, ticking taking a lot of boxes.
What?
You're definitely ticking a lot of the boxes for what a salesperson, um, you know, typically sort of sounds and presents himself as well. So it makes sense to me. One thing I'm always thinking about with it when it comes to like your passion. Obviously, you followed your passion a little bit by the sound of things and gone into that route. Do you sort of tend to think that someone should follow their passion, or what I've been thinking about recently is do you find your passion? For example, like if because the advice is to follow your passion oftenly in terms of your career. I think about myself. So if my passion is it's always been football, as well, soccer too. Sorry, I call it football, but
Rugby?
no,
Football?
football. Yeah,
Soccer? No, I'm just
that's
kidding. I'm
right.
just kidding.
That's my passion, right? And
Yeah.
if I'm not a bad player, but like if I'd followed that professionally, I would be I'd be broke. Wouldn't have a job. Like I wouldn't be nowhere. So however, I sort of ended up falling into recruitment. I just found it, out of nowhere, and it became my passion, if that makes sense. So I don't know. What do you think about that sort
Yeah.
of find your passion versus follow your passion sort of debate?
Yeah, so first I need to ask you a question. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi, no doubt.
Okay, okay. Yeah, right? That's an easy one. Okay, so this is very interesting as well, and I think we can peel it back to just, human behavior being a really interesting topic.
Mm,
And so for me, passion will come from a place that I'm not always consciously connected to, right? It will be influenced by, my current role or something that interests me. And so, like you mentioned, you can grow up and really develop a hobby, a passion for something that, like say you love basketball and your whole dream and your whole life is to be a basketball player, but you realize that there are some limitations that you're experiencing that are keeping you from obtaining that as a realistic goal. And I think the thing with passion is sometimes people really harp on themselves because they're not successful in what they're passionate about, but you can still participate in these things, and really honor just the fact that you're curious about it. I
mm,
mean, there's a million things to be passionate about. And I think whatever inspires you is a reflection of yourself, your personality, and it's an opportunity to really understand, who you are a little bit better. And maybe you're not going to be a basketball player, but you could be the most passionate basketball fan, and that has a lot of credibility too. Without fans, the entire sport would be lacking. We saw that in COVID. It's like really weird. Like there's that energy is important as well. And like you mentioned before, you never really know what's going to strike your fancy out of
Mm,
nowhere. Like I didn't really expect to be extremely passionate about my BDR role. I saw it as a means to an end.
yeah.
But once I got to it, I realized that there are so many things going on. There's career BDRs that are doing these really fabulous things. There's challenges. And for me, I'm driven to solve problems. And I think a big part of following your passion is to not be too hard on yourself, to be really receptive to letting that passion kind of be flexible and take you to places that you really never knew you could go. And then let that natural curiosity drive new information, a
Yeah.
new sense of self awareness. So yeah, passion is a difficult one
Mm,
because humans are weird, and what we're attracted to and why we're attracted to doesn't always make sense. But whether you're a very passionate person or you just don't feel anything, I think there's opportunities waiting everywhere
yeah.
if you're willing to just open yourself up to them to develop passion.
100%. And I think
Is
it's,
that
yeah,
good?
that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's just about being, I think it's just about being okay that if it's not, your passion doesn't have to be your profession. I think, it doesn't, you don't have to.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah. And if it turns out that you're really passionate about something and it just doesn't work out, that can really hurt us, be devastating. And so, it's again just trusting the process that being human is weird.
Mm,
And where you fail, there is just a million doors to be open where you'll succeed.
mm,
So, failure is integral to success. It's not the
yeah,
opposite.
100%. Yeah.
And your lack of passion or your hyper passion doesn't really speak to your ability to foster it from nowhere,
Mm,
really. So yeah,
100%.
again, sorry for these
No,
long-winded
it's great.
answers.
It's great.
Like,
I've got one final one for you, Rosalie. So something
okay,
that
okay.
we've spoken a lot here on this chat about work and our professional lives, etc. Something that we've connected with and in the past is sort of, I think it was something we spoke about recently. Not necessarily tying your self-worth to your job and your profession. Um, Definitely an interesting topic and something I've been thinking about a lot recently. You mentioned you had some thoughts on that, and also you mentioned potentially a different take being based in the US. What's your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, so I'll take the first question first. You know, we're only allotted a certain amount of time, right? Time is our biggest asset. Our mortality rate as humans is 100%. On average, we're going to spend, 4 to 8 hours, depending on your role or how much you're invested into it, 5 days a week. And so sometimes I feel like it's a slippery slope. I mean, even with the best intentions to maintain a healthy work-life balance, it's going to interfere just because we don't have enough time to experience all that we want to experience. And so, I think it's really important to understand that, you know, you can be extremely passionate about your job and it could be the only thing that you want to do, the only thing that you wake up for. And that's okay. If that's how you want to, identify yourself in your work, if that's your legacy, I can think of like maybe CEOs, right?
Mm,
It becomes more than just a job. It's a legacy for them. And that's fine. But even in those positions, there has to be something that separates you from everything that you invest yourself in work. Or I could just imagine that you'd be extremely exhausted and tired and even lost, because once you tie so much of your purpose, your efforts, your time, and your sense of self into a company, what's going to happen when you get laid off? What's going to happen if that company has to
yeah,
file bankruptcy?
yeah,
Who are you going to be at the end of the day when you have been so vetted into your work? And again, I think people should have the autonomy to do whatever they'd like to do, but it's not who you are as far as everything that you could be. So, I think for the people who are really lost and kind of their feeling of being overwhelmed because they just don't do anything except work, wake up to work,
Mm,
go to sleep just to wake up to work again. Um, that there's more to life than just clocking in and clocking out. And, whether or not you agree with that, it's still relevant to, keeping yourself sane
mm,
and having a work-life balance. The second question, America.
mm.
So America loves work. They love work. There's this ideology that, they love so much work that their overall population, not to get too political, would be real docile and overworked, right? Which they're hungry for convenience. Obviously, that's kind of a driving force to where we see ourselves now, which is a very capitalistic nature. So there's this argument in America where, you are work. That is your whole purpose in life is to be a worker and to be so, oh, it's my son's cell phone. So yeah, let me, well, I don't even know. Is that interrupting? It's just gonna go
It's
off
all
and
good.
off.
It's all good. We're good.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, I, I wish there was like a way to pause my video so I can turn this off, and there's not. So, like, um, I no, this is terrible. Let me. I don't know what to
It's
do.
all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, so I think here in America, we're really conditioned to really put our entire sense of self, our entire lives, into our work and building our career. And can you turn that off, see? Thank you. Yay! In for the rescue. And that's shifting.
Mm,
So, when COVID happened, it actually, forced everyone to kind of go into all remote. And what we realized is that we had so much more productivity because we weren't forced to be tied into an office. We could get our laundry done. We could spend time with our children. We can, have a more realistic roadmap
yeah.
to developing a work-life balance. So yeah, here in America, they basically want to work you to the bone. And you're not supposed to have an
Yeah.
identity outside of your work. What did you go to school for? Like what did you go to college for? It's all prepping you to be a career-driven and
Yeah.
career-focused person until you retire. So that's kind of the philosophy here, and that's changing.
Mm,
And we're realizing that happier employees are actually way more
productive. Yeah.
productive than overworked employees. That are just tired and they're letting everything in their personal life fall
Mm.
because they just don't have enough time.
Super interesting, and well, great to hear. I guess
Yeah, it
it's
is
it's
interesting.
great to hear it's sort of changing. I think that can only be a good thing. I think we all sort of fall into that trap. Well, I'm talking, myself here. You can fall into the trap of just tying yourself to work, and if someone you maybe catch up with someone you haven't seen in a while, they're like, "Oh, how you been?" For me, often it's always the automatic response is yeah, going, being good, thanks, work's been good. That's the first thing you go to often, or often you're
Yeah, or like when you meet someone like, hey, who are you? What do you do for work? Right? So like when you're meeting someone new, going on a date or meeting a new
yeah,
friend, it's like, hey, tell me what you do for work. And it's just like that's the first
100%,
question
yeah.
in getting to know someone, which is interesting,
It's so
right?
interesting,
It's
yeah.
like,
It's like,
who cares?
yeah, it's like, this is what. Why is the first thing? So if you introduce someone, so this is Rosalie. She's a BDR. She works in sales. Or why is it not? This is Rosalie. She's a great mother, or whatever. She's a.
Yeah,
This is Rosalie.
like
This is what.
it's
It's never it's always the first thing
yeah.
is always work. It's just so deeply ingrained, I don't know, in Western society, I think.
It really is,
Mm,
and it's really not indicative to who you are as a person. So again, it goes back to just this philosophy that I think we experience in America, where your whole life purpose is to work, and to be overworked, and to continue, just never stop grinding and never stop earning. And it's not healthy.
mm,
So I agree with you. It's really weird to see like, hey, what do you do? It's like I'm a BDR because it's easy and I enjoy it and it helps me fund my life, but that is has nothing to do with who I am as a woman, as a
Yeah,
person and where I want to be. So yeah, it's really a weird reflection
yeah.
that we experience commonly.
Well, some great points, Rosalie. Any sort of final thoughts, on anything we've touched upon today, before we wrap this up?
No, yeah, no final thoughts for me. I think just, keep spreading the word, keep the podcast alive. I think, LinkedIn is a powerful tool to feel
Yeah,
connected and related to others, where you might not have that in your own environment. So, I guess last final thoughts is thank you for being a source of light, a source of insight, a source of, trial and error, because not everyone has someone that they can connect to in that way. So keep going, I
thanks.
guess. Go all
Well,
in.
thanks for your
I
kind words.
support.
Thanks for your kind words. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for coming in and joining me for the chat. Really enjoyed it. I think you're doing some great stuff out
Yeah.
there yourself, so keep it up. Appreciate you as a connection, appreciate you as a friend. So, Rosalie, thank you very much.
Oh, we're friends now. So does that mean I get to go to the beautiful beaches of Australia?
Stay in touch.
Where's Nemo? No.
Stay in touch. Rosalie Vaughan, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
no, bro. Of course. Bye, Joe. Good night.